So you know what, you can call it superstition, dumb luck, or just a crazy coincidence, but our world often revolves around the number 3. We've often heard that good things come in threes and bad things come in threes. Well, as voted on by all of you, the fandom, today we're going to count down and take a look at the top 10 Transformers trios in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey one, hey all, I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course subscribe, baby, and while you're at it, that's right, hit that notification bell please, because it helps me out a ton, and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, the Everything Factor, Transformers, Collectors, NL, and the Autobot family. Have a look for me everywhere across social media. Not a hard man to find. All of those links, they are down in the description. And we're going to count down, as voted on by you guys, the top 10 Transformers trios. But before we get to that, we're going to kind of give a few honorable mentions. Now, to be fair, there were a lot more votes cast than what I'm going to mention here for trios that kind of surprised me, and some that are here in the honorable mentions did not make the main list, and that sort of surprised me a little bit too. Of course, I'm talking about such trios as the Deluxe Insecticons. That one came as a bit of a surprise. I was shocked that we didn't get the trio, the Lamborghini brothers, I guess. The trio of Sideswipe, Red Alert, and Sunstreaker did not make the list, but they did get a couple of votes. Fortress Maximus got a couple of votes, which I thought was very interesting. When I questioned why Fortress Maximus, the argument logically was made, well, you have Fortress, you have the head Cerebros, and you have Emissary, or Spike, if you will. That's 3, and indeed it is 3, but it did not garner enough votes to make the main list. We also had Tarn, Voss, and Kaon. They represented the DJD. They got a couple of votes. Again, they did not quite make the list. As well as the Monster Bots. And I sort of thought that the Monster Bots might make the list, as well as the Phase Sixers. I sort of thought that they'd make the list, but they didn't. So who did make the list? Well, we're going to kick things off with number 10. And as you well know by now, I often like to have in hand some plastic representation, but I can't do that with number 10 because, sadly, I don't have a plastic representation of number 10. Who am I talking about? Clocking in at number 10 for the top 10 best trios, as voted on by you guys, is none other than Rail Racer. Great entry on the list. Not often do we get trains. Not often do we get trains that combine. I think that Rail Racer is an excellent addition. As a matter of fact, he is one of the RID offerings that I really wish to this day that I actually had in my own collection. Nevertheless, he garnered enough votes to come in at the number 10 slot. What about number 9? For number 9, I do have a trio to hold. It is the trio of Galvatron, Cyclonus, and Scourge. Now, granted, Scourge is actually holding Fracas right now, and Galvatron is represented here by the Unique Toys Vintage Color Mania King, but this trio from Season 3 of the G1 continuity is undeniable. I mean, Scourge and Cyclonus, undoubtedly the right and left hand guys for Galvatron. Nevertheless, I can say that I'm a bit surprised that this trio made it on the list above other ones. But the votes speak volumes. All I do, folks, is count them up. And clocking in at number 8 is another Decepticon trio. This time again with a leader, this one being Megatron instead of Galvatron, and this Megatron is the Toy World's hegemon, and 2 more of his left and right hands. This time it is Starscream and Soundwave, although it's questionable how effective of a right hand Starscream really is. There were a couple of votes cast for Megatron, Starscream, and Shockwave, and a couple of votes cast for Megatron, Soundwave, and Shockwave, but this particular amalgamation, this particular trio garnered the most from that kind of mix of 4 characters, and that's why they take the number 8 slot. So as we slide into number 7, we've looked at an entry so far from Robots in Disguise 2001, we've looked at Season 3 of G1, and we've looked at Season 1 of G1. How about something obscure from G1? That's right, the Rainmakers come in at number 7. They are not prominent, but we do know that they made a lasting impression in that one episode that they were featured in, and we do know that they do have an interesting power to create acid rain. I wasn't sure if this particular trio was going to get enough votes, but there was a kind of a hard push on probably in the last 24 hours or so of voting, and these guys managed to tie up the number 7 spot. Not gonna lie, I think the Siege version of these guys is probably ideal. Are they very monochromatic? Sure, but so was the animation. And for number 6, does anything say the number 3 better than a trio of triple changers? The Decepticon triple changers in this case of Octane, Astrotrain, and Blitzwing, or Octone if you will. Oh, what a doofy name. Nevertheless, this makes perfect sense to me. We have 3 Decepticon triple changers. They make a trio. They all share the kind of same sort of function of being triple changers. I'm surprised that the Autobot triple changers didn't make the list. Spoiler, Springer, Sandstorm, and Broadside unfortunately did not make the list. As a matter of fact, the Autobot triple changers didn't even get a vote. The only time that Springer came up, I guess you can call this another honorable mention if you will, was when a vote was cast for Springer, Hot Rod, and Magnus. Go figure. And so here we are at the halfway mark, and while the Autobot Lamborghini trio did not make the list, the Datsuns did. This is Prowl, Smokescreen, and Blue Streak. All of them appeared in G1. 2 out of 3 in Season 1, Smokescreen in Season 2 if I'm not mistaken. They all have very different personalities, but of course share the same body type, much like the Seekers, for example. Much like the Rainmakers, for example. And I think that when you think of trios, this kind of trio would have to come to mind. Whether they're the best of friends or not, whether they're the most predominant of characters or not, the guys are obviously triplets. And for that reason alone, they slide in at the halfway mark. Speaking of Seekers, how could number 4 not be the Coneheads? I mean, they had to appear sooner or later. Now, yes, this is the classics versions of these guys. There was some custom paint work actually done on Ramjet. I've never been a huge fan of this mold. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but it does stand currently as my Coneheads. Do I hope that we get updates for them? Heck yeah! Would I like the Earthrise mold maybe used for these guys? Probably. I think that would be a good use for it. Nevertheless, while these guys were not predominant in Season 1, and I think they might have appeared a couple of times in Season 3, they actually appeared often in Season 2 and quickly became their own kind of favorite trio faction, being, again, not so much sharing the exact same body type, but they were obviously unique from the main 3 Seekers that we all knew and loved from Season 1 already. And because of their predominance and because of kind of their lasting impression among fans, they slide in at the number 4 spot. Number 3 is probably the closest thing that Transformers have to Murder Hornets. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the Insecticons, baby. I really hoped early on there were no votes for the Insecticons, and I was like, man, come on, it's the Insecticons. Somebody's got to vote for this trio. Besides, they can clone themselves and become an entire army themselves, just from these 3 guys. Obviously, it's Bombshell, Kickback, and Scrapnel, or Shrapnel, or whatever other weird name you want to give them. I call them Shrapnel. I love this trio. A lot of people said they'd like to see these guys get updates again. Not me, I'm cool with this. I could not argue, though, that it'd be nice to see these 3 probably done with the exact same colors and in a 3-pack? Potentially. Maybe. But they do slide in, and they are well known, so they do slide in at the number 3 slot. That only leaves us with 2. And unbelievably, number 2 and number 1 were separated by only 1 vote. Man, you guys made it real close, but clocking in at number 2 is the classic Seeker trio of Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp. Sadly, I still don't have Hotlink as of this recording, but you knew that this Seeker trio had to appear somewhere on this countdown, sooner or later. Everybody knows that the Seekers share the same body type and that there's tons of them. But these three lads, they buddied around for years and years. They had to appear on this countdown as one unit, and I'm glad that they took the number 2 slot. But of course that leaves us with one last question. If these guys took number 2, then who took number 1? So this is it. We're at number 1. Smile, say cheese for Reflector, or Refractor if you prefer the Siege name. Nevertheless, we know this trio. It is the 3 guys that make up the Decepticon camera that was used for spying many times in G1. I go back to the line by, I think it was Thundercracker, who said, okay, Reflector, let's see what you can see. And Reflector was always able to get the best pictures to bring back to Megatron. What can I say? I'm a bit surprised. I thought that, this trio would make it on the list. I never for a moment thought that they'd actually make it to number 1. Nevertheless, here we are. And honestly, since these guys not only look the same, but kind of share the same mind and act in accordance with each other, they're probably the most trio of all the trios. And that's it. We have another countdown in the books. Thanks to you guys and your participation in all of your voting. Let me know who your favorite trios are. What ones would you have liked to have seen on the list that didn't make it? I could think of a bunch, personally. A lot of people struggled with this, though, and said that they found duos easier to name than trios. But, as this shows, there's a lot of trios and a rich history, not only from G1, but we even had trios named from Transformers Prime that didn't make the list, from Beast Wars, sadly, that didn't make the list. Looking at you, Tripredacus Council. As always, I appreciate you coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, don't forget there is a donate link down in the description. Please hit the subscribe button, man. Stick around, have some fun with us. Don't forget, somehow, someway, each and every day you do make a difference. And I look forward, man, to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit right here inside the videos.